At the time of recording, Donald Trump has been surprisingly MIA for the past several days. But earlier this morning, he took to Truth Social to issue a very panicked message attacking Chinese President Xi Jinping about how difficult it has been to try to negotiate a new trade deal with China, undercutting this notion that Donald Trump is a master negotiator who has things perfectly in control. And this comes amidst two bombshell reports about the disastrous consequences of Trump's tariffs that we have to talk about. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, it's not going well so far based on public indications in terms of Trump's tariff war with the rest of the planet. Trump whines Chinese President Xi Jinping is extremely hard to make a deal with. Duh, Donald, why didn't you know that? Trump has complained that his, quote, very tough Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, has been making tariff talks difficult in another late-night social media post. Taking to his Truth Social platform early Wednesday morning, Trump said he's, quote, always liked Xi, but he's, quote, very tough. I like President Xi of China, always have and always will, but he is very tough and extremely hard to make a deal with. Trump took a much angrier approach towards China last week when he posted to Truth Social that the regime has totally violated its agreement with the U.S. So much for being Mr. Nice Guy. The U.S. and China are currently in the middle of a 90-day truce after Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods soaring to 125%. So, again, this would indicate, among many other indicators, that this art of the deal master negotiator who's got everything perfectly under control is actually in over his head and talking out of his ass. This is not a good look, okay? Just objectively, the public indicators are that Trump has shit the bed on this, which is why his polling is so disastrous with respect to the economy and tariffs. And Trump is giving it away. Oh my God, I didn't realize that it's like hard to do this stuff and it's not going as well as expected. That's on Trump, and Trump should be forced to pay a brutal political consequence, particularly in the upcoming midterms. Now, that would just be bad enough. People should mock Trump and Trump's Republican allies for this. Again, this tacit admission, not even tacit, it's this public admission that he screwed up and he's in over his head. But then you add some additional context to it, and it makes it even worse. So as Mediaite reports, courtesy of the Wall Street Journal, a conservative publication, Trump trade war has U.S. automakers looking to move manufacturing to China, per Wall Street Journal. Oops. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that U.S. automakers are seeking a workaround to avoid increased expenses resulting from Trump's controversial tariff policy, relocating manufacturing to China. Quote, 4 major automakers are racing to find workarounds to China's stranglehold on rare earth magnets, which they fear could force them to shut down some car production within weeks, the journal reports. Several traditional and electric vehicle makers and their suppliers are considering shifting some auto parts manufacturing to China to avoid looming factory shutdowns, people familiar with the situation said. Ouch. Ouch. That totally undercuts one of the stated goals of the Trump administration with respect to tariffs, which is to onshore, to bring back manufacturing here in the United States. Trump's tariffs are having the exact opposite consequence. Not incidental, they are causing this problem. Trump announced a draconian tariff policy on April 2nd, Liberation Day. However, the stated goal of moving overseas manufacturing back to the United States was seemingly scrapped in favor of negotiating better deals. In the 2 months since it was announced, very few deals have been announced, but numerous pauses on specific tariffs have been announced, leading critics to suggest this trade war wasn't entirely thought through. Duh. Now, according to a new report and on the eve of a much-hyped conversation between Trump and Xi Jinping this week, there are reliable reports that U.S. automakers in dire need of rare earth minerals for the production of electric vehicles are looking to move some manufacturing operations from the U.S. to China. So again, not even preventing the reshoring back to the United States, but actually reshoring from the U.S. to China. Again, not only preventing the outcome, but having the exact opposite effect. We might lose manufacturing, not potential manufacturing, but manufacturing that's already here because of Trump's stupidity. This would be a political disaster for Trump, as well as an economic one for the communities of workers who would ostensibly lose their jobs if such a thing were to occur. Let's see. Ideas under review include producing electric motors in Chinese factories or shipping made-in-America motors to China to have magnets installed. Moving production to China as a way to get around the export controls on rare earth magnets could work because the restrictions only cover magnets, not finished parts, the people said. If automakers end up shifting some production to China, it would amount to a remarkable outcome from a trade war initiated by Trump with the intention of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. And again, we have to be so clear-eyed about this. Democrats, the politicians, their staff, their allies in mainstream and alternative media, including me, and every single one of you watching have to be shouting, retweeting, sharing this shit from the rooftops. These facts don't speak for themselves. And if the worst happens and people lose their jobs as a direct consequence of Trump's tariffs, those people need to be told that's why they lost their jobs. Don't just assume people will connect the dots to Trump. Especially when you lose your job, you've got other shit to worry about. How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to, pay off my debt? They have to be told, hey, listen, I don't care how you voted, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. You need to know that if you're an auto manufacturer, you work for an auto manufacturer here in the United States, and you lose your job because they sent it to China, that is 100%, not 50%, not 99%, 100% the fault of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. So again, you do what you're going to do, Mr. Voter, if or Mrs. Voter, if this push comes to shove here, if worst case scenario happens. But maybe one of the things you could do in the next election is to politically, ruthlessly punish the party that fucked you over, which in this case would be objectively 100% Donald Trump and the Republican Party, by voting for Democrats. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but if it does, people need to be told why it happened. And the alarm needs to be sounding in advance, because hopefully public backlash from, again, people who work in auto plants all across this country, Detroit and other places, will hopefully sound the alarm and say, hey, Donald, pull back on this, because if you do this and this happens and I lose my job as a consequence for it, we're going to vote your ass out in the midterms. There won't be a single Republican left in Congress. They will all be replaced with Democrats if you go through with this. That's the sort of message that people should be sending in advance. And if the Trump administration continues doing what it's doing, then you follow through and you vote in a damn Democrat. In advance of the planned conversation with Xi, Trump took to his Truth Social platform early Wednesday morning, and of course, we just read that as well. So that's one devastating report. But in the words of the late, great Billy Mays, I always say Tough Acting Connected, but that's not it. He did these infomercials for it was like some sort of cleaning product, like a squeegee thing. But anyway, he would always say, but wait, there's more. And there is more. Trump tariffs will shrink economy and increase inflation per damning CBO report, Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, led by a Republican. The leader of the CBO is a Republican. They can't escape this shit. Trump's controversial tariffs will hurt the size of the U.S. economy and cause rising inflation, according to a just published report from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. While the White House deals with unexpected blowback from political allies like Elon Musk and Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson over a massive spending bill that the CBO said would increase federal debt by a whopping $2.4 trillion, and again, other nonpartisan, even conservative estimates have it at about $5 trillion, there's another portion of the report that paints Trump's draconian tariff policy in a much darker light. The CBO estimates that the changes in tariffs will, quote, reduce the size of the U.S. economy as well as, quote, increase inflation by 0.4 percentage points. The good news for the Trump administration, however, is that the report also estimates changes in tariffs will, quote, reduce total federal deficits by $2.8 trillion. And that would be good news for the Trump administration if they weren't also adding to the deficit with their spending bill. Again, $5 trillion. So it's just like they are stepping on this rake for no damn good reason. The CBO was established in 1974 by the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act to give Congress independent, objective budgetary and economic analyses. There is some irony in these findings, as Republican leaders and Trump have dismissed the deficit spending findings of the CBO, insisting it does not account for a growing economy that would come as a result of massive tax cuts, particularly for upper or wealthier tax brackets. The CBO actually finds that the tariff policy would negate increased deficit estimate from the spending bill, but it would come at the expense of a shrinking economy and higher prices. So they are checkmated either way. They've been trashing the CBO. There's only good news. The only good news to be found is in this other CBO report. So they'd have to say the CBO sucks, except for here. But also the CBO report that has good news has a lot of bad news in it as well, in that it would increase inflation and shrink the economy. So they're checkmated. I don't know what they're going to do with this, but these are two bombshell reports between auto manufacturers planning to ship reshore jobs from the United States to China and a CBO report indicating that, yeah, you know what? Your tariffs, if properly executed, might actually shrink the deficit, but it's going to increase inflation and shrink the economy as well. And by the way, it comes from a source that you spent the past 3 weeks trashing, so not sure how many of your supporters will trust it anyway. Devastating news for Donald Trump as he is publicly, I don't want to say waving the white flag of surrender, but certainly publicly flailing. I don't even know why he would issue that tweet, because all it's going to do is give more and more people proof that you don't know what you're doing because you're publicly complaining about how hard it has been for you to achieve your goal. Not good. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.